Madam Chair?
Arrested, Dr. Lawrence, Donna Cooper, and I will have to participate by phone today if I can come over.
Okay.
Jetty and Kim. Jetty and Kim.
Okay, John and Betty and Tim. So we have 3 so far.
Hi, it's mostly all well.
Nicole.
Hi, Senator, this is person, but I'm around the corner. I was calling in, so you all could just ask me again, but 5 minutes.
Okay, yes. With that, yes, we do have a quorum then.
We do.
I'm not sure if there's anyone else.
Teresa, you also have to.
Oh, hi, Melanie. How are you?
Are you good?
Anyone
Good
else?
morning, Teresa. This is David Hill with the EIC.
Hi, Dave. How are you today?
Good, thank you.
And the board members in the room, we have Chair Corman and Sean Sterling. So we have.
Yeah. Good.
Okay. So
Okay. So, thank you all. Sorry, I guess it was the room. Was it me? I apologize if it was me causing the delay. I was hoping you all would get started, but not able to. Okay, good. So it's not me. Other folks around the table want to say who they are. Sure, go ahead.
John Scully, Washington Gas.
Hussein Karim, attorney with DOE.
Lance Lump, DOE.
Good morning, I'm Ted Trabue with the DC Sustainable Energy Utility.
Teresa Lawrence with DOE.
And want to say around the room who's here?
The Mayor Christopher D. Cheryl Dove, DCSC. Pretty Magistrate, WPL,
Grass Oracle.
Alicia Warner, Friday. Patty Boyd, DCSU.
John Young, DCSU.
Great, thank you. Okay, so first thing up is approving our agenda. Oh no, I know Lenny said she was going to be late getting on the phone because she's an agenda item. That's why we have that in the end. Anybody have any comments on the agenda or any edits, additions, subtractions? Tell Joe. Okay. So hearing none, would someone like to move for approval of the agenda? Let's make that Sean. Thank you. Anyone want a second? Am I able to second?
Yes.
All right. All in favor? Oh, sorry.
This is Donna Cooper, I second.
Thank you. All in favor? All right. Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you. The agenda is approved. Do folks have comments on the February 14th minutes? Do folks need a moment to look at the minutes? I think that I'll just say, I think that the format with the summary at the end is very helpful. the fact that these were how they meshed with the minutes. Did anybody have any comments or edits for the minutes? Not you don't. Would you like to move or?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Anyone second? Anyone on the phone?
I'll second. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All in favor? Say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Any opposed? All right, the minutes from the 14th are adopted. Maybe the folks on the phone don't realize it's just Sean and me as board members here, so he's carrying a big weight, having to move everything on his own. So thank you. Okay, so the next up was the quarterly update and the update on the SREC leveraging program from Director Trade. But first want to tell us about the recent recognition for the DCSEU.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning to you and the members of the committee and those assembled here today. I actually have a slide in our presentation to talk about the award from the Environmental Protection Agency.
Excellent.
Where
Hang
we were.
on just a second. Sandra's trying. Oh, I'll send it to her. Okay, thank you. Fish the one here too. Go ahead.
Where we were singled out for our work with hard-to-reach communities here in the District of Columbia. And the award ceremony will be held next Friday night. And I know Dr. Cooper's on the line. I know Pepco is receiving an award as well. Washington Gas is receiving one as well. So congratulations to you guys as well on great work here in the community. And this is
Congratulations to everyone.
this is our first time receiving something like this. So it's kind of exciting for us.
Did you all receive it because of work you were doing together, or did you independently?
No, these were, and Sean, I don't want to speak for your organization or Dr. Cooper's, but these were probably 3 independent initiatives that were launched. Maybe you'd like to speak to why you guys were recognized. Dr. Cooper, can you speak to Pepco's award as well?
Yeah, and that is separate as well. It wasn't integrated in that regard, and I can just send some background information to everyone on it, but it's just direct community engagement as well as support on these initiatives as well.
And ours was for excellence in promotion for some of the marketing campaigns that we've been started. So we were unfortunately left out of the EPA's press release for DC. They put us in Virginia, which is now.
Man.
But the 3, DCSEU, Pepco, and Washington Gas all getting it as 3 of the 8 for the district, I believe, that are getting Energy Star awards.
Exactly.
And they're all for hard-to-reach communities? All 3?
Not all of them, but they're all
that's
different types of partnerships.
Ours was around hard-to-reach communities.
I think that's great. And I'll just say from my anecdotal experience in other jurisdictions, that seems to be a message that other jurisdictions have difficulty conveying, that energy efficiency and conservation is for everybody, and only for the well-heeled. So I think that's really great to assist DC's stellar reputation in that regard. So thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you all, Washington Gas and Pepco. It's wonderful we're on the map. Great.
Good. So, again, thank you for having us this morning to give our quarterly update. And quite frankly, right now, April 1st marked the middle of the fiscal year for us. And so what I thought we would do is kind of take a glance at where we are as of the middle of this fiscal year, and then give you an analysis of where we were about a year ago, so you can see the progression and how we have grown in some areas. There's also a discussion that we would like to have start today. I think we will get a little bit deeper into it probably in a couple of board meetings around particularly the low income work that we're doing, how the numbers, as I pointed out to you on February 14th when we last met, how the numbers in the low income space had not moved significantly. I want to give you an update on that, and we can again talk more deeply about that at our next meeting when you will really start to, and I'll tell you why the numbers haven't moved much between the last meeting and this meeting. And then we can talk about how they will be moving later on in the year and the different impacts that that will have on the marketplace. We'll show you a little bit of the earned media that we've received over the last month or so, and then Anmal will get into the presentation, update you on where we are with SREX. All right.
Okay.
So with that, I'll help you get there already. Yeah, there we are. Matter of fact, I printed this slide out because I know that it is probably difficult to see from this screen here. So let me give you a handout of this so you can follow it a little bit.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I know your eyes are good, but I didn't want to assume that you would see it. We're trying to convey it. Oh, yeah.
Send them. I will forward it to them.
Oh, they don't have the
Yeah.
presentation yet? Okay, I will speak to some of the numbers rather than, so that the people on the phone can follow us as well.
And I'm forwarding the presentation to the board members on the phone.
Okay. So the way we designed this particular chart, which is similar to the reports that you've seen in the past, we only added a column on the right. The column on the right represents where we were basically a year ago today. So we're giving you kind of a year-to-year analysis of the work that we've done. On the electric side, if you look at the column on the far right that's in yellow, you could see by the middle of the year, we had in the bag a little over 15,000 megawatt hours in terms of savings. At this point this year, we have about 3 times that amount that we've already accomplished this year. Similarly, for natural gas savings, we're roughly a little bit more than 3 times stronger than where we were at a similar point last year. So you can see the benefits of having this 5-year contract, being able to seamlessly move from one year to the next has allowed us to have a very strong first half of the fiscal year. If you move down about 4 lines to the low income spend, I've got a slide on this and we'll show you this a little bit in more detail. This number, as you can see, is about $500,000 lower than what it was.
Good morning, everyone. This is Sandra.
Good morning, Madam People's Counsel.
Thank you.
This number is about $500,000 lower than where it was at a similar point last year. I have a slide where we'll go over exactly why that number is lower and when you will see these numbers start to move forward to get us to our low income spending goal for the year. As you can see, green jobs numbers are looking a good bit stronger this year. We're at 38 already, whereas we were at 22 FTEs at a similar point a year ago. Largest energy users, whereas we were at about 14 largest energy users. A year ago, we're already at 61 this year. CBE spend is another number that I'll talk about in a minute. This will be largely driven by, again, a slide that I will show in just a couple of moments. But if you take the last 2 lines where we show electric spend and gas spend, combining those 2 numbers, adding them up, so on the right-hand column you have about 3.5 million, and then you have 1.3 million, which gets you to a total spend a year ago of about 4.85 million. On the far left column, you see 5.7 million and 1.4 million adding up roughly to about $8.1 million. So you can see where we are significantly ahead spending-wise this year over where we were at a similar point in time last year. So that's kind of what I wanted to show you with this slide. You know, again, the benefits of a 5-year contract, the benefits of the seamless transition from one year to the other, allowing us to move in the marketplace much more quickly.
Can I ask a question about the jobs?
Sure, absolutely.
Are they, if you can refresh my memory, are they incremental from the previous year, or are some of those rollover from the year before?
The jobs goal is not a cumulative goal. Okay. The jobs goal is a year-by-year goal.
Okay.
So there's no rollover from prior years in that number.
Okay. And do you know, like, are any of those counted DCSU staff?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes. And because, the vast majority of the staff are district residents. So you would include staff, you would include the DC resident staff of contractors who are working on behalf of implementation work, some of the teaming partners who are working with us to the extent that their hours are billed to a DCSU project.
Okay.
And then you would take, of course, that workforce development program. Thank you. Sure, we're going to have a little bit of slide on that as well. You see a piece about that in a second. Those numbers all rolling into that number.
Okay.
Oops, I went too far ahead. So this chart here, have the members received it yet?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Before you jump in, did others just get on the phone too?
Hello? Yeah, this is Johannes Smealan from OPC.
Okay, great, thank you.
This chart shows our work going back to October of 2017 through where we hope to be at the end of September of this year.
Can you call the chart?
Sure. This is the chart showing your electric savings goal for about 2 years. And so as you can see, this shows you the beginning of the contract here. Cumulative totals go ramping up to where we want to be if we're hitting the maximum for the electric energy savings goal over here on the far right. As you can see, when we started, we were a bit behind, having ramped up through July, August, September to hit the maximum on the electric savings goal at the end of the first fiscal year of the contract. Roughly working along a trajectory here to get us to the maximum goals. This gap here represents what we will report at the end of next month, so we don't know exactly what those numbers are right now. But our pipeline that we have been examining very, very closely, again, pipeline won't all close. This is pipeline. These are projects that we believe, that we've been working on. Our account managers have been going out and working with customers. Our pipeline would lead us to a point, if all of it closed, and then I won't sit here and make the assumption that it all will. It never does. But to an assumption where we would be a little bit ahead of the maximum goal and where we need to be by the end of year 2. Okay.
Hey, can I clarify? So what that means is that so the green line you're looking at shows that for Q3 we have about 80,000 megawatt hours in savings in pipeline. Well, as Ted said, we won't convert all that, but it's going to help with the 45,000 that we
And when you said the goal that we'll be exceeding the goal where we want to be, are you referring to a benchmark?
This is the electric benchmark.
Okay.
Yes.
The minimum or the maximum?
This is the maximum.
Before we continue, just to clarify, we sent along just the one slide, but we don't have, some members are asking if what you're discussing has been sent out, but we haven't sent the full presentation. We just sent the slide, so we will be able to send the slides that you're going through after the board meeting once you send them along.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. That's fine.
let me
Sorry, I moved in the wrong direction. Our gas savings gas savings goal shows a very similar picture, quite frankly. Having started, when we started the contract a year and a half ago, a good bit behind, picking up significantly in the June of 17 timeframe, and moving towards where we exceeded the maximum by the end of the fiscal year. And again, we're looking very, very strong on the gas savings numbers again this year, expecting by the time we get to the end of the fiscal year at September 30th that we will be well on our way, if not, exceeding that, hopefully that goal for gas savings as well. So we are looking very strong with pipeline there, looking to close a good number of measures over the last, Marcus, what do you think we have slated for closure over the last 5 months-ish.
Right now in pipeline, we have roughly about 67,000. I'm sorry, 670,000 terms. On top of the 666.
So could I just ask, for you to help me understand this in sort of a translation, what the project, I was under the impression that the gas savings was the area where we had a big ways to go to hit the maximum benchmark. So how are we getting there?
No. We exceeded the maximum benchmark last year. We're well on the way to exceeding it this year. It's the low income benchmark. Where's there's that gap. And that's what I want to talk about in a couple of slides.
Thank you.
Now, low income, you know.
No, I was just trying to remember that too. We exceeded the max for gas last year as well. Yeah, just on our job.
Yeah, me too.
Morning. Workforce development, and I'm really, really happy that Cheryl Dove is here, who leads this program for us, to talk about what I might miss in presenting this slide. But we had 9 graduates last year. Not last year, it was earlier this year. And we're really, really proud to say, and thank you, Dr. Lawrence, for coming over and participating in the graduation ceremony with us. All of them are either fully employed, that's 6, and 3 of them have gone on to graduate school to pursue master's degrees and the like. And so, but we are very, very proud of all of our graduates. Where are some of them working?
So one person is working at Nevada, another person is working for a consulting firm. One of the people who is going on to get his master's degree is spending the summer in Senegal working on sustainability projects there. We have another person going to Germany, similarly to study abroad.
Excuse me, this is Sandra. Would it be possible to put the microphone closer to Taylor, the folks at the other end of the table? I'm having difficulty hearing his presentation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let me come down there.
Oh, okay. So to repeat, some of the places that some of the graduates are now placed, we have one person who's working at WMATA, another person who's working at UDC, a third that's working at Howard University, and then we have, as you mentioned, people who are, actually there are 2 people working at Howard University. Another person who's working for HVAC company, and of the individuals who are going to study to get their master's, and one getting their PhD. 2 of them are going abroad first. One is going to be working on a sustainability project in Senegal, and the other is going to Germany. So quite a wide variety, and the types of positions that were accepted by the candidates really range widely from mechanical engineer to HVAC technician, project managers, and energy consultants. So we always try to have a good sampling of the different industries that we support in our cohort. So sure. So we're working now on our next cohort. We will be starting a cohort in late April, and then another one in June. The first one primarily will be focused on the trade. We have a couple of companies that would like to have both HVAC and lighting installers, and then because of the timing of when students graduate and the like, we also are looking to have a cohort that will start in June. And some of the interest there, again, WMATA would like to have another person working with them. Same thing with UDC and Howard University, and we're still working on exciting stuff coming up. And I also didn't mention this, but everyone there shown received a national certification. Several people got lead certified, others got building operator certification and program program manager.
Terrific.
Thanks, Sean. So,
Hi, everybody.
good morning.
Who are you?
It's Lenny. Hi, Vicki.
Hi, thank you, Lenny. Okay.
So let me pick it up and talk about our income qualified efficiency fund, also known as our primary low income program. When I showed the numbers earlier this morning, we talked about how the numbers in the low income space haven't moved very much so far this year. And we said back on February 14th when we met that we were launching a new program in this space because the low income goal has shifted from where it was historically a spending goal where we have spent about 30% of our budget in the low income space to a goal where we are spending about 20% of our budget in the low income space, but must also achieve 10% of our overall savings from that spend. In the prior contract, there was no savings number that had to be achieved, we just had to spend in that space. So we've had to revamp the way that we offer this particular program. So the way we offered it was we brought contractors in and we told them that we wanted them to go out and find projects where the owners of multifamily buildings and like or shelters or clinics would come in and contribute towards the overall cost of the energy efficiency measures that were being installed. Prior years would have seen this program operate where we were paying sometimes up to 100% of the installation for the program. This is a program now where we are asking for significant, sometimes owner contribution to help offset some of the cost of the total installations. So we received 30 proposals under this program. 28 of them were received with owner contributions between 5% or up to 50% of the total cost of the efficiency measure. We have about $1.2 million in total projects that we have approved. Work orders will be going out in the next week or so. This is also very different than the way we've done some of the low-income work in the past as well. Here we are in the middle of the year issuing work orders for a lot of this work to go out, and I'm sure Madam Chair, you and other members of the board have heard about the kind of stop and start, fits and starts that the organization has gone through. What we're trying to do now is smooth that out so that we can get work out, get it out in the middle of the year. If we need to do more under this program, clearly we have time to do it later, but it's not a rush to do everything in the last couple or so months of the fiscal year. So we're really happy with the results that we have received from this initial launching of the Income Qualified Efficiency Fund. And again, when we come back in about 2 months, we would want to report to you about how we are doing with this work. This is work right here that will drive CVE spend because a lot of these contractors are seeking to do this work. This work will drive green jobs. A lot of the people who are working for those contractors are DC residents. This will clearly drive our low income spend. So it drives a number of different metrics and goals that we have to hit over the course of the year. And so we want to come back in about 2 months and give you an update on where we are. This is the first time we've launched this. I want to keep the board apprised of exactly what we are seeing, what we are experiencing in the community, any modifications to the program we might need to make as we move through the course of the fiscal year.
So may I ask, out of the 28 proposals, I think you were saying that the contribution share ranged from 5 to 50%. I'm assuming you aren't only awarding people who are offering the max, but like if 5% is as meaningful as, so what kind of criteria are you using to?
Our engineers are evaluating the yields that we receive from the projects. We're evaluating whether or not they're CVE contractors. There are a lot of different variables that would go into decisions on what. Some of these are not CVE contractors. I just want to be clear, not all of the contractors working in this space are CVE contractors. So, clearly, though, we have a CVE number that we have to hit. We just worked out our subcontracting plan with the Department of Small and Local Business Development. And so we have a very aggressive CVE goal that we have to hit this year. We want to make sure that this is one of those programs that historically, we've always used a lot of CBDs to report.
There's also been active.
Yeah, would you prioritize an apartment building weatherization retrofit over, say, a shelter in this case, knowing that the direct impact quicker would be to the tenant versus?
Would we prioritize a multifamily building over a shelter?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're trying to balance the portfolio, quite frankly.
Okay.
As we're trying to figure out how many residents we can impact, but also savings that we can achieve.
Okay.
And then
And there were a limited number of shelters that were given to the contractors when they came in for the initial.
Yeah, or shelters. So you had mentioned other types of buildings that were not basically resident occupied. They were either, to assist low-income community versus someone who. My only concern with that was whether or not the savings trickled down to the low-income community versus being pocketed by the building owner or operator of that business. So, I know it's always a tricky thing. We deal with it in utilities too when we're designing low-income programs.
Yeah.
So that sort of balance.
And it seems it goes to the question that we had during the annual report on the change in law, expanding the definition so that it did include things like hospitals or shelters that were arguably more remote, but a means of reaching. Kristen, you're gonna say?
No, I was just noting, I guess, I don't know if you mentioned the presentation that you provided. I might have missed
To
that.
your
Oh,
work?
there you go. Perfect segue.
Right on cue. So, just under a month ago, Kirsten was kind enough to invite us over to make a presentation to her membership over at AOPA. And we were pleased to, of course, have been invited over there. And so we took several of our account managers over and one of our engineers. We've done a lot of work with the members of AOPA, but this particular opportunity gave us a good chance to talk about what we do, how we do it, why we do it, and has resulted in a good number of projects with more of your members than we've had in the past. And so I really wanted to thank you for giving us that opportunity and to say, even early on, there's been a lot of success, a lot of uptick in the number of projects coming from your members. So thank you very much for having us over at your headquarters. And, folks washing gas came in and spoke to us, was it last month or the month before last, as well, to talk about some work we might be able to do with your team as well. Mm-hmm. So any time that there's an opportunity to come out and speak, we would welcome it with open arms and make sure we want to get over and speak to people in the community about what we're doing.
What is the other projects with AOPA now? What are you looking at?
So some of that I heard in particular were those, going back to Sean's point, the concentration of your lower income communities. There are some members who have, sole buildings that are majority 30% AMI or below, or voucher based. So I think those are the ones who seem to be most interested in trying to find some additional partnerships. So in a sense, it may not be pocketing the money because those are some of them are rent control buildings, and of course those costs can't be passed through, but it's a reduction in savings, especially when you're talking about master metered buildings.
Yeah, I didn't mean to imply
No,
that
no,
any.
I heard someone's comment on the phone.
Oh, yeah, just want to make sure that it's always been a challenge for some of the limited income programs for all utilities to make sure that how do you measure it?
Right.
How do you measure that impact in the end? Usually that's Dmv consultants are pretty good at trying to nail that down. I mean, that's where we look at how those are benefiting.
And see, those particular buildings will have verifiable numbers because they can demonstrate exact numbers in terms of the percentage or numbers of tenants who reach that threshold. So it is an easier ability to kind of quantitatively measure whether or not you're reaching that intended population.
So that was, again,
Hi, this is Sandra. Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, this is Sandra. you know that this has been an ongoing concern for LPC, particularly how the savings trickle down to the individual consumers, the low-income consumers for which they are intended. I definitely would, like to have ongoing conversations. Ted, I would welcome your coming over to the office so that we could talk about, what your measures are. Even with other low-income programs and, particularly for the multi-family homes, it is difficult when the owner or owner of the building is getting savings and, how do the tenants or the residents really benefit from that? That's, something that we've been struggling with for many years. And I don't know if it is addressed in your program. So I definitely would welcome an opportunity to talk with you, Ted, more informally or formally.
Madam People's Council, we can set up a meeting at your convenience, as informally or formally as you'd like it to be. Hopefully informally.
Great.
We've known each other for a number of years. And,
Absolutely.
And yeah, we can clearly do that if your calendar permits within the next couple of weeks or so.
Okay, great. I'll have someone contact you.
Okay, thank you.
If the host and or the SCU aren't averse, but it's obviously their choice to include another SCU board, advisory board member, some of us who are wanting to educate ourselves would be pleased for an opportunity. Not necessarily this one to put anyone on the spot, but just working in more.
Okay.
I'll add one or two more. Passive house training. This is, again, something that has not been done to our knowledge heretofore in the country. So we are going to host the first one in the country later on this month. Dr. Lawrence, I want to thank you for agreeing to send over Edward Young from your agency here. There are about 25 people coming from this training from all over the Mid-Atlantic. We will host it at our offices, as you can see, from April 23rd to 27th, but it's a very, very exciting opportunity for us. I think there's people from DGS coming as well who are excited to participate in this. With their certification to come to back into it.
And there are very few people who actually have the certification. So a lot of organizations and developers that want to design and build passive housing pay quite a bit just for the actual certified passive house training. So they hope they increase the number of organizations.
I don't know what a passive house is. It sounds like when my husband watches television.
So a passive house is a house that, can they hear me? So a passive house is designed and built in a way that allows the house to not need external forces outside of the footprint of that home in order to keep cool and safe. So the materials used, the technology used in the house make it net zero because so except for in a passive house, you often don't have may not have a device that
The Chesapeake Bay Foundation has a passive house on display with full educational materials and people somewhere near the headquarters in Annapolis.
And it's a movement that is happening at a much larger rate in other countries, but very important as far as into the country.
Next, we always like to update the board on some of the earned media that we've received over the last month or so. And as you can see, everything from the Energy Collective to Huffington Post, Mid-City DC, we've been sent, I think the Washington Post is down there at the bottom, there's an article in the Washington Post. We've sent around a lot of these, What we're also moving towards is a piece that Ben Burdick and his team are developing, where we can update you more often than just at the advisory board meetings and show you some of the earned media pieces that are coming out, where they talk about what we're doing, how we're doing it, and the success and the impact that we're having here in the community. So, Ben, do you want to say a little bit more about the piece that you're sending around to them? Sure.
So hopefully you all received it. I know some of you opened it. It's called the DCSU Digest. We'll send it out on our
Can you speak into the phone?
He's coming. He's coming.
So hopefully most of you received it and opened it. We sent out an email last month called the DCSU Digest. And what it's designed to do is just kind of give you all an update on, the advisory board and some other stakeholders, an update on what we're working on, some past accomplishments, what we're working on currently, some earned media, and some of the stuff that we're writing about on the DCSU blog. So I encourage you all to open it. If you have feedback or things you want to see on the digest, please feel free to send that on to Ted and Marcus, and they'll relay it back to our team. But we're excited to continue to keep you all updated on this, not just our media, but on what's going on.
Is there anyone who, for any reason, didn't at least receive it? Because I want to make sure that everyone received it. You didn't receive it?
That's my knowledge.
Okay. Let's make sure that the chair, let's make sure the chair is on the list. She didn't receive it. John, are you saying you didn't receive it either? That should be the end.
This is Sandra. I don't believe I received it, but I'll verify that. And if we did not, I will get in contact with you.
Okay, and check it out. Hopefully it didn't get caught in your spam filter, but if not, let us make sure that we have everyone's correct email address so that next time we send this out, this will be sent out fairly frequently, so that next time it's sent out, we make sure that everyone receives it, okay?
I think this has come up before, but is there a way of measuring the effectiveness of the media or the outreach in terms of how many people, I think we talked about this, that you do poll people when they come in and you say, how'd you learn about this? And then that's a way of figuring out if they saw an article and it was what prompted them to come in and do something.
We're able to see how many people went on our website, how many pages they clicked through, and things like that. Those things are quantifiable.
Use like Google Analytics and others to track all that. Some of the stuff gets really interesting. I don't know if people would ever like to see it, but I know from our marketing team, Washington Gas, they pull a lot of data and know how people get where on websites and other programs.
Yeah, so we use Google Analytics as well. We also use surveys for anybody who's applying for a rebate, especially on the residential side. We encounter questions on surveys, so we track that. And of course, we track through our AdWords campaigns through Google Analytics for people coming to the website for advertising. And then with earned media, we use Meltwater, which is another service. So anytime we send out press releases or we get earned media, we can kind of see what the total reach is for those different publications that might include the DCSU on a story.
No, I'd like to make a plug for an upcoming event. The Housing Association of Nonprofit Developers is having an event, Washington Gas, and DCSU sponsors and panel talking about the event is for green building financing incentives on May 9th at John Marshall Bank. Not speaking.
No.
Oh, okay.
I'd like to speak, but I'm speaking again.
I know there's supposed to be a panel with, potentially Washington Gas, maybe a TEPCO person, a CSU person, but that was, maybe that's just in the planning stages.
Okay, oh, great. We'd love to participate.
Sean, thank you.
Sure. Okay. We talked about the Energy Star Award earlier, and so Anno, I think the floor is yours now. The SREC Support Pilot Initiative.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ted. As was requested by the board, here's an update on the SREC support pilot initiative. Based on the recommendation of the board again, we reached out to MDV to explain, the pilot initiative and what the impact will be, with Dave Murray, who leads MDV right now. And based on the information we've given him, including the presentation, he discussed that with his own stakeholders over a weekly call, and we got some questions back, pretty much similar to the question we faced from the board last time we made the presentation. And so we're in the process of preparing responses to MDV right now. In terms of some of the progress on the implementation side itself, a draft MOU has been submitted to Sun, the implementation partner of this initiative, and they're right now at it with their legal team. Sun at their end has selected the installer for the first co-op. That'll be doing, I think the target is around 40 odd households, low income LMI households. And so they're in the process of forming that pipeline right now. We submitted the updated program plan based on some of the feedback we received from the board to DOE for approval in the middle of March. As part of the process to secure the entity that will actually purchase the SREC from DCSCU, we put out a public solicitation out there last week, actually on March 23rd. The last date for the proposal submission was last week on Friday, and we received bids, and we'll be announcing the preferred bidder on Wednesday, which is tomorrow. And to prepare for the possible eventuality of bundling these SREC cash flows, and in return for a lump sum amount from the foundation, we continue to engage, but that'll only happen once we are able to actually dole up the incentives as planned and actually get these systems implemented. So these are some of the things that have happened since we talked about.
And Madam Chair, that concludes our presentation and updates for the morning.
Does anybody have any other questions or comments? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, this is Betty Ann. Sorry, I had to unmute. I just wanted to thank you guys for participating in the roundtable that the commission had on our investigation of proposed or try to form a proposal for the low-income multifamily program that we're going to be eventually putting in place using the money, $11 million from the settlement, the Pepco Exelon purchase, and focusing on multifamily energy efficiency for multifamily buildings. And one of the goals we have obviously is not to duplicate other projects and not to have to create a whole new mechanism if possible. So I did want to thank Ted and the SEU for participating and for not only filing comments, but also participating for people's council. A lot of other interested parties were there too.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you for giving us the opportunity. We found it to be a very informative session, in fact. Your staff is wonderful, and I think they did a great job of shepherding through a number of presentations and a number of different stakeholders who were assembled that morning. So I please go back and congratulate your staff on a very, very well conducted roundtable.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, next is update on the Dmv contract and the recap from the Dmv subcommittee meeting.
Good morning, folks. I'm pleased to announce that we have executed a Dmv contract with Nmr Group. Nmr is a employee-owned evaluation energy efficiency program evaluation firm. Nmr also has a couple of teaming partners that have joined their bidding proposal. Those are Demand-Side Analytics, Bluepath Labs, SETI, and Econometric Consulting. So together this team would be conducting the evaluation of the DCSCU's FY17 performance as it relates to impact evaluations, process evaluations, and a number of other important studies. The contract was signed pretty much 2 Fridays ago, March 30th. And we're having our first kickoff meeting with the contracting team tomorrow at the DCSU's office. The OE will meet with the evaluation team for about an hour or so, and then we will engage the DCSU following our discussions with the evaluator. Hopefully we can wrap up this evaluation of the FY17 programs within the next couple of months. I have not seen the work plan as yet, so it's hard for me to provide you with exact dates, but we certainly will share that with the board. What we do know is that we are severely behind in terms of getting the evaluation done for FY17 because we're midway through 18. So that's going to be priority number one, getting the impact evaluation done so that we can make a determination of how much incentive the SEU has earned for FY17, and also to begin really focusing on how we start the process for FY18. There are a number of other important issues on the DCSU side that requires strategic guidance from an evaluator in terms of new programs and initiatives that they are in the process of launching or would like to launch that would require some technical assistance. Hopefully this evaluator will be able to provide that guidance too. As far as the advisory board subcommittee meeting for evaluation, we met last Friday, just a small group of folks, DOAE, along with Becky and Lenny and Millie that showed up for the evaluation subcommittee discussions with the aim of really trying to understand what's in the contract and how we can best improve the reports and some of the metrics that are measured and captured in the benchmarks reports and even the broader evaluation report. That subcommittee has a bit of a homework to do in terms of putting together some of the derivatives, and when we say derivatives, we're talking about other metrics besides the acquisition costs or besides the realization rates that the board think is of interest. For example, getting an understanding of the amount of emissions that the DCSU is reducing, or how does the DCSU programs or energy savings help reduce asthma-related incidents or other broader health impacts here in the district. Stuff that is mentioned in the societal cost test, but we need to tease that out a bit further and explain it to folks exactly the broader impact that the SEU is having on the district. So we plan on getting back together with the subcommittee and even bringing the evaluator to the table, hopefully by the next meeting, which is scheduled, I believe, for May 8th, so that the board can get a chance to meet the evaluation team and go through some of the questions or even some of the work plan to really understand how the evaluation would be done over the next couple of months.
Millie, you want to add anything from the advisory board members' perspective?
Thanks, Vicki. Yeah, I think Lance covered most of it. Just, I guess, for more context, what we were terming derivative purposes kind of sprung from the desire to have kind of a higher context of metrics to draw on to get at the achievement of the SEU. So another example was health benefits that could be derived from some of the work of the SEU that could be used to kind of paint a higher level picture of successes that the SEU is achieving. So the plan is for, and anyone is free to put ideas out there, but the plan is to just compile what we think, sort of the narrative that we would like discuss and sort of the why that we're trying to address in the report. And then once we have that kind of high level, a compilation of high level derivative purposes, as we're calling them, to then come up with metrics that could help paint that picture. So really trying to pinpoint sort of the purpose and the narrative that we'd like to cover, and then figure out what metrics make most sense. Obviously, some of the metrics are defined in the SEU contract, so those are non-negotiable, but these would be additional metrics that could help paint a high-level picture.
I was going to say, this is Lenny, and in addition to that, it did come up that there are complementary programs undertaken by the district. And I believe when we have a set of metrics for an established program, that we ensure that to the degree that the other programs overlap, that they use the same metrics. You understand, Lance?
I do, but
Yeah.
I can
words,
address that a bit further at a later date.
That the efforts are overlapping. There are some shared metrics that would be very useful that they be executed measured in a similar way, so that the program results are comparable. So this goes to whatever Betty Ann's putting together, the solar plus storage for low income. All of these things have slightly different operational requirements, but they are aimed at same or similar goals. So to the extent that that's the case, I'm simply suggesting that outcomes be measured in a similar fashion.
So I think I would just add, at its simplest, I think what the board members were saying was, again, urging it's not transparency, more of a communicative ability, or something to be gleaned from the Nmv report, because again, something like an acquisition rate is pretty opaque. And recognizing that there's performance benchmarks and that there's not new things added, it's more, what does the performance benchmark mean? What does the performance benchmark actually accomplish? Or what does the performance benchmark accomplish in the whole toolbox of what it is that's occurring? And not wanting to reinvent the wheel, assuming that there are measures like is asthma going down, and whether or not we're able to correlate that, who knows, but trying to just get our arms around what else is there already in the district. I think we recognize the societal cost test was discussed in the end of the EM&V report, but it looks to us anyway like it's kind of a simple multiplier, that if you stop using X amounts of fossil fuel generated energy, then you will reduce asthmas by Y, but it's still not necessarily telling the story as to the district's choices as to what it's doing or where it's localizing an impact or how it's trying to maximize the whole host of benefits that can be accomplished through these same measures. And I think also for my part, I'm still trying to get my arms around whether or not there are other conventionally used measures than acquisition costs and realization rates. Because again, by themselves, I don't think they don't tell me a lot. They may not tell a council.
They are really geared. Those are geared to looking at operational efficiency, and our message is that get beyond that and let's talk about program efficiency and effectiveness.
During your discussion, was there any talk about, you said these are derivatives, things like the amount of water saved through, programmatic initiatives or number?
Yeah, those are the ideas, yeah.
Okay.
And maybe we shouldn't be using the word derivative. I mean, it was more like embedded, or the whole host of benefits, as opposed to something on top of.
And we want to get ultimately to a situation where we're focused on the sustainability part of sustainable energy utility, which means better coordination and broader mix.
Okay.
And I think for both what Lenny and Millie were saying, is those measures that we know go to operational efficiency don't necessarily answer the why is one selected, or why does one matter more than another.
Why one program or
one program, one metric? Like, how do you value the multiple things that are part of a societal cost test? You value one more than another.
This is Betty Ann. I wanted to weigh in on the issue of the EMV data too. At least I think, again, at the same measures, we ought to try to be sure we don't using the same data. I remember we even had that little issue with the annual report of the megawatts of electricity sold to districts, and we had one number, the report that we give to the council based on retail sales that are provided, and then TEPCO had a slightly different number. So at least when we're looking at programs that we have in common, try to use the same data, base data. Be helpful.
The only thing I would say to that, Chairman Kane, is that the baseline usage that we're using is already specified in the contract, and that was based on what the consultants provided us, I believe, 2 years ago. We're using 2015 as the baseline. So the savings that are measured for the SEU are measured against that baseline. Whether it's right or wrong, we would have to go back and change the entire contract to be able to come up with a new measurement.
Yeah.
So that we're
I wasn't
consistent.
suggesting that, but it's going forward when we can try to use the same data.
Okay.
And it is a 5-year, I mean, that was the whole issue. We didn't see it before, and it's a 5-year contract, and so if there is room or wisdom to making a modification at some point over the 5-year lifespan, let's consider it.
Sure, no, I'm not talking the Dmv contract, I'm talking about the SEU's contract. Because all the evaluator is doing is reviewing performance against what's spelled out in this contract. So if the numbers are incorrectly stated in this contract, then that's where we would need to change the baseline before we can even ask the evaluator to do anything differently.
Which is what we'll discuss next too.
Yep.
So when you're, for the most part, you are evaluating based off of gross retail sales for commercial, residential, industrial, based off the numbers the consultant gave you?
No, the numbers in this contract are based on weather normalized retail sales for electric and gas that we set the baseline for, let's say, based on 2015 usage. So the targets that you see for electricity and natural gas, that gradually ramps up to about 1% per year. It's 1% reduction over a 2015 baseline. So let's say in 2015, 1% represented about 120,000 megawatt hours on the electricity side. That's what we use as the measuring stick to take the DCSU savings for each fiscal year to compare it to 2015 to say this much is equivalent to 1% in 2015 or 2% of 2015 usage. That's where I was going in terms of the numbers and how it is measured.
Okay. So how do you account for
that probably wasn't a good example. That's the only example. We don't, in our report, the way the law is written for our RPS report, it's not weather normalized, it's actual. So that explains the difference. But where there can be, things like number of apartment buildings, demographics, population, number of people in a certain income group, etc., it would be useful to keep using the same numbers. But
True.
You're right, for different purposes. Our RPS numbers have to be based on actual sales, not weather normalized. But that's the technicality. I was making a more general point, or just using that as an example.
I would think it's always difficult to do an Dmv when you can't do billing analysis.
Can't do what?
Billing analysis. We actually look at a project basis.
True.
Assess what is the actual savings. Going into a regular multi-level building, you can look at the year before data, the year of installation. Essentially, what you look at is the participants save this much savings based off the
right.
analysis.
Well, you can do billing analysis with the participants' permission. They can make their data available.
That is true.
And then that I believe is something the SEU is pursuing right now as we speak as part of.
We rolled out a pay for performance pilot.
It ought to be a part of their participation that they agree to allow you to access it under. You can't access the data without the customers. At least if you're talking about utility billing, gas and electric bill. But once the customer gives permission, as they do to their third-party suppliers, etc., probably be a good suggestion to make it a condition of their participation that they make that available to the SEU for evaluation.
Yeah, I think that's exactly how it's being done now. Once the SEU engage these entities, they will get the permission to be able to access their bills.
For the entire contract, in order to pay an incentive, one of our checkboxes that we receive a physical bill from Washington Gas and from PEPCO, and it goes into a file. For the pay for performance, or sometimes with some of our larger customers especially, we have a permission slip for both Pepco and Washington Gas where the customer signs off. And in the case now, over the last about year, our data analyst has a read-only database that Pepco populates with the next customer's data. And Washington Gas is a little bit different than that. I think we receive a spreadsheet of data. I don't think we have an online portal to look at yet. If we can, that would be great. But in each case, when we're working with a large customer, we ask them for permission to access their data.
We can talk about that because I know we provide that for limited the LIHEAP programs as a one-off lookup on people's, but I don't know what the rules on data privacy are behind that. If the customer opts into it, we probably have to know the permission for that customer. But we do have an online portal for low-income or LIHEAP, agencies that we work with in our jurisdictions to do one-off lookups of someone's usage and billing.
That'd be great. Would it be possible for me to get my data guide?
Yeah, because that changes Dmv a lot. When you start getting into the nitty-gritty of individual homes and everything, you start being able to do things like net to gross ratios, more than realization rates. Start realizing what exactly people are saving. Versus, there's a lot of programs in the district that probably, and there's also just behavior. People change behaviors, the way the construction is done. There's savings that are happening automatically. And what you want to do is account for what the savings are that the program is affecting.
Yeah, no, that's a great point about the behavioral issues. Power. Is that something that goes into the now? Behavioral changes?
No, because in order for us to evaluate it on the back end, the DCSU has to first implement those programs for us to be able to get to it. As Patty mentioned, they're just starting the pay performance or even the billing analysis. The evaluation team is certainly capable of doing it, but they can't do a billing analysis on the portfolio if they have never initiated a billing analysis program, so to speak.
You can only tell when behavioral change is not occurring if the rate of decrease in usage is nowhere near what it should be based on the installation. And that's generally attributed to an on-site building manager not understanding or wanting to operate the new system correctly. So you can see it in a negative.
Absolutely. I would say we ran a thermostat program in Virginia where we just offered incentives for a programmable thermostat, and we did that for 2 years, and we actually saw that people used more, and that was something Energy Star had seen a couple of years before, and took off the Energy Star certification for thermostats because people don't program their programmable thermostat. So you put a huge boiler in a multifamily building, and you have this elaborate system, but someone's not trained on it well enough to know that it has to run a certain way. Or you install a boiler and the person doesn't do the building manager or energy manager doesn't do testing after the boiler is in place to actually see whether the nameplate efficiency matches the actual installation, because the installation can change the efficiency, whether or not it's vented properly and all these other things. So this is part of the EMV to catch these type of things, but it's also part of the process for when you're allowing rebates to go to these equipment that you verify that they're installing it correctly, and then following up to make sure that we're managing it correctly. So not only is that's part of maybe a process evaluation that goes along with the impact evaluation.
So I remember George Hawkins, when I was here, talking about the issue of teaching the maintenance folk about how to use these energy-saving devices, and if they didn't know what it was, they just rip it off the wall because they don't know what it is, or they think it gets in the way. I was also, which is a training issue, I guess, and then I was also thinking behavioral being the kinds of, when you get a smiley face on your bill if you use less energy, and that makes you be able to boast that to your neighbor. Those kinds of behavioral changes that may come about. But I'm nominating you for something of the board and inviting you to join.
I'll accept.
Thank you, because I think these are really helpful. Okay, and so our goal is May 8th. There's going to be a presentation of what document by the?
Well, May 8th, the plan is to bring the evaluation team to the board meeting to have them give you a brief overview of their work plan and how they intend to conduct their EM&V for the DCSU, and also to provide an opportunity for the board to have a discussion with the team regarding some of the things that we've been talking about the last 10 minutes here, or even last week, in terms of how the reports, the kind of things that you think they should hone in on in their reporting outside of just basic benchmarks reporting.
Okay, and so please remember to get those things to us in sufficient time in advance.
Certainly.
Thank you. Thank you, subcommittee. NDOE leader, super monitor. Want to go ahead, Lance, with the contract modification?
Yeah, I just want to make sure when you say contract modifications, you're talking about the new ones and not the.
I am not.
You want to go back to the old ones because.
On the agenda has been for 4 or 5 months, and we drafted that there were something like 4 contract modifications made. I don't remember the date. 3 of them were discussed, 1 was not.
Okay.
And it's been lingering for a really long time.
Okay.
Recognizing that the board isn't able to do any work, that the board was not involved in ones that have already happened.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's so important that the board understand what modifications mean in terms of what it is that the board is supposed to report on. So yes, we're still on the old one from, I think it was October or November, that never made it back.
Okay. So I can go through each of those. There were 3 modifications made since the contract was signed.
We could just do the one that we didn't go, because I think you went over.
I went over 2 of them. I didn't.
Oh, the third, okay.
Well, the third one, we didn't get into, I would say, a minor aspect of the third one. We did touch on the third one briefly. The last modification that was done was the modification around the treatment of the low-income savings target. As you may recall, we've had tremendous amount of discussion around tracking the 10% energy savings for the low-income benchmark target versus the entire overall savings goal for the SE.
I'm just going to interrupt. I had expressly requested that we be able to see the old admin language, and it may have gone out in an email, but it's not. I don't know if people brought their own or it's on the slide or here. But I guess the question is.
Are you talking, Vicki?
Sort of.
We're just gonna fill up the modification that's being referred to.
Thanks. Is the people on the phone able to see what you're pulling up?
It wasn't the drop box.
It was in, it went out, yeah.
It's in the drop box. I'll pull it up.
I think it went out from an email from Lenora.
Oh, wait, what am I doing?
I think it was in an email from Lenora on.
There was one went out yesterday. I think one went out some time ago. Nancy, if you see it from
You have to go to the contract.
Oh, did I pass it?
No.
Okay. Oh, I think right the contract. I think I did see it right there. Yeah, here it is. Yeah, this was uploaded in October, and I think it includes. Okay, so this is mod 3. But I think you're asking to compare the old and the new language?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was really confusing because it has to do with numerators and denominators and understanding the significance is helpful when you can compare it to the actual language.
Okay, if you can highlight the difference, Lance.
This is the modification we're talking about here. As you can see, section C.40.3811. In this modification, this is where the change came in terms of assigning a fixed number for the low-income energy savings target. If you scroll down in this contract, Teresa, to page 47, on page 47 is where we reference just simply a 10% savings target for the low-income benchmark. The problem being with that 10%, the DCSU would not know what that 10% is until they get to the end of the year to report their total energy savings, which we thought made it completely unfair for the DCSU to be working all year to achieve savings, and then when you get to the end of the year, if, for say, you achieved 100,000 megawatt hours, then you have to ensure that 10,000 of those megawatt hours came from your low-income programs. And it would have been that way on a continuous sliding scale. So if you scroll down, this is the same language as you see in the amendment in the front, but we've quantified what this 10% reduction actually means. And we took this 10% reduction based on the target for the first year, where we've had a hard number for the target, so we set a hard number for the 10% as opposed to leaving it on a sliding scale. And again,
this was not the one I was referring to. The one I was referring to had to do with the preparation of administrative costs.
Yes, so I'm just going through the entire chart. Then, so if you go back to the first page, scroll down, down, back up, back up, back up. This is the language that you're referencing in terms of how do we calculate the 20%. As you can see, the benchmark requires the SEU to spend 20% of their annual expenditures from the SETF on low-income programs. What we've done is clarify clearly what this 20% means. Prior to this language, the 20% stated that in calculating the contractor's 20% spend, that all of these things would have been in the numerator. And if you go back to the original language in the contract, so again, back to page 47, where we can show the original language. No. Down. 48. Go back. Sorry.
You want printed copies sent?
Yeah. In a previous folder.
Here, this language. Note what it says: annual expenditures, programmatic administrative evaluation of all expenses shall be included in the denominator, but not the numerator. This was prior to us having the discussion with the SEU and separating out what we call general and administrative costs versus programmatic costs. As it's stated here, this language does not tell us clearly what goes into the numerator. And if you read it as it states, all it's pointing out to what should go into the denominator, but what do we put in the numerator in calculating the spending for low income? So we clarified to say what goes into the numerator are only programmatic expenses related to low income programs. Everything else goes into the denominator, meaning your denominator will have programmatic expenses, administrative expenses, evaluation expenses, all other expenses. So total spending for the SEU goes into the numerator. On the top, we're simply just taking only the expenditures related to low-income programs. And that's the other clarification that we made, so that there's no more ambiguity between us and the DCSU or the contract and the DCSU regarding how we would be calculating their 20% spend.
So how would you define programmatic spend?
Programmatic expenditures are expenditures that can be tracked directly to a specific program. General and administrative expenditures.
Let us give him an
Dmv
example.
to the Dmv portion of low income to the programmatic spend. Even though you're saying that that's taken out of that, I'm just trying to get, is it just the measures installed plus the labor?
No, it's the measures installed plus the labor plus the program manager that's running the program plus printing and supplies and all things that can be attributed to that specific program. General and administrative expenses are expenses that support the DCSU as an entity. So that would be the distinction between the two terms. But it's very possible that you could have program-specific evaluation that's in programmatic expenditures.
And programmatic expenditures can include SCU personnel?
Yes.
We had someone design this particular programmatic offering that I talked about a little bit earlier. We have someone who put out the solicitation, met with the contractors and put out the solicitation to see, bring us back projects that have some customer contribution in them. Those are staff costs. That would,
Account managers going out and seeking businesses, engineers doing calculations on the savings,
Marketing associated,
marketing.
promoting the grant process.
Okay, so what is now in the numerator only?
In the numerator, it specifies programmatic expenditures. Can you go back up to the second page, sorry, please?
To the mod?
Yeah.
And for those on the phone, where if this is the document we sent out yesterday, that's also in the Dropbox. We're simply, it's a 117-page document, so we didn't, print it out. But we're toggling between the modification language, which is at the front, and comparing it to the previous language, which is further down in the document. So we're on mod 3, and you see, it's mod 3 because in box 2 it says MO3. And we are going through what we changed it to and comparing it with what was there previously. So it's comparing pages 1 through 3 to page 47, 48 of the same document. Yes, section C.48312.
So right there, right on the top, that's what's in the numerator now, Vicky. Just the total direct programmatic costs.
In the denominator.
No, in the denominator is all costs. So programmatic costs are both top and bottom.
But only low income costs
On the top.
are in
Exactly.
low income direct costs.
Yes. That's true.
And so administrative costs are now where?
Administrative costs are in the denominator.
Saying low income costs have to be 20% total cost.
Exactly.
Total cost meaning all other direct programmatic costs aside from low, plus any other costs.
Yes.
Including indirect admin.
Yes. So at the end of the year, if the SEU spends that 20 million, the 20 million would be in the denominator. In the numerator, we're just trying to figure out exactly what was spent directly on low-income programs. No.
Now, do you look at, if you were to look at that as programmatic costs, it might not be part of the contract, but do you look at it as a ratio of incentive to non-incentive dollars?
No, we bundle it all together. And the reason being, even the non-incentive dollars, as we discussed, these programs are not going to run themselves, so to speak. You need to have personnel managing these programs.
Oh, I know that. I'm just saying from when you're evaluating the program in order to maximize the benefits that are getting to the low-income customers, you would generally try to stay within a certain ratio, that the measures that are being installed that are driving the energy savings are a certain percentage of the overall cost of the program. Each program generally like has more overhead at the beginning of a program cycle versus the end because it's ramp up costs. But once it's running smoothly, you start having, say, 50% of the cost of the program go to incentives, then 55, and then 60. Generally, programs that are running pretty well are around 60% incentives to customers by the end of the program cycle. For a lot of utilities, that's 3 years. For you, it's 5 years. So actually, it's a little bit more time. But it's always a good metric to follow, to just keep an eye on. It might not be part of the contract, but just generally speaking, you're really trying to hone in on what are the energy saving measures that are reaching the low income community versus, there's no control over how much well, there might be in your contracts, but just making sure that those costs are minimized as much as possible, that the program is running as efficiently as possible. So it's not. That's why when I like the savings target in here because it gets beyond just spend, because that isn't a very good metric for someone who's trying to. For a low-income program, in my eyes, it's more how do you drive energy savings? You look at that 20%, see how much is actually going to install incentives.
Sure.
So are you saying something like that would be better defined or be explained in the definition of a programmatic cost?
It would be good to maybe just review it in the DMV after all the costs are end of the year. Say whether or not the program is run efficiently. It's might not be part of a PEIC goal or DOE goal. All programs should kind of look at that.
We have that. We have it instead of non-incentive in the budget. Almost 80% of our low income funds are direct incentive dollars. We're in the starting point.
So that's great. That's great.
And I think
You should
all
definitely
nonprofits.
talk about that. That would be higher than normal.
Yeah.
What that also does is you have very strong goals on workforce development, which is a great goal in itself, but many energy efficiency and renewable programs don't have that nationwide, so it makes it very difficult to benchmark DCSU versus other states. But when you're looking at a specific program and a specific program cost where that's not lumped into the numerator, that's very helpful because that generally, I'm not saying it inflates overhead, it shows that, so many people on the payroll might be misleading. When you're looking at a program, and only the program costs, that looks at the really effectiveness of the low-income program. Do the same with the other programs as well, and you talk about 80% of the costs going directly to incentives. Yeah.
We'd like to probably follow this discussion, the benchmark with kind of our understanding of how to operationalize the benchmark.
Yeah, I think this would be helpful, and this is why I've been harping on it for 6 months. Can you just quickly show us the definition of programmatic cost, if there is one?
All the way down to attachment J. I think it's after that one. Keep going down to the next attachment. No. Now, so this is the general and administrative cost methodology where we defined both programmatic and administrative costs.
Second
keep
page,
going
I
down.
think.
Keep going.
Yeah, there's a definition of programming costs. Keep going. Oh, no, it's loading. Keep going. No, it's up. It's up. Further up. Well, it's not loading this
Just an
page.
empty page,
No, it's not loading the page.
but I think it's nothing on the page.
No, there is. It's just.
Oh, yeah. That's the page with programmatic definition.
Could be.
Because up top, it's not in any of these definitions.
maybe that's something that would be helpful. So
It's basically direct costs associated with the program. That's what it is.
All right. So if we're going to
It's on the first page.
Again.
Right here.
Go down. Right here. That direct cost definition.
But that term isn't what's used in the definition of what goes into the denominator.
If you go into section 3,
But 3 million of it, or 7 million dollars.
Here's page 3. This it? Okay, so
Go down. Yeah, there it is.
this one?
Yeah.
Section 5? Okay.
There it is. Allocation of costs for existing program.
Okay, so we're looking at section 5 of attachment J15, which is the GNA methodology, the general and administrative cost methodology.
Which isn't still tying together the term programmatic.
So in this document, instead of saying programmatic, we'll see direct cost.
Yeah, so maybe it should say programmatic instead of direct, but what it is any cost that is so you can be identified as solely for that particular program is a direct cost. Whereas, Ted works on all the programs at SCU, so his labor hours cannot be directly tied to a specific program, so he's GNA.
But that's now in the denominator. Because it's not programmatic.
Yeah,
it would be in the denominator also.
Denominator is all cost.
Right, I'm just trying to distinguish the programmatic. Something like that, I'm just gonna look a bit more, but I think that a presentation would be helpful, so I would request
Teresa, go
that
back to
when we
section
discuss it,
3.
let's please have, the definitions that are relevant and the page
Right
with
there.
the
See the total
new
direct cost
contract
for an expense
language
group.
against the page with the old contract language. We don't need that on the order, so.
I was just making a suggestion to Dr. Lawrence to have a chart that shows the old and the new simultaneously so you can see it for the visual people.
Yeah, exactly.
If you want to
Oh, yes, please. Yeah, and we only have 10 minutes left.
Not
so
bad.
there were new
Yeah, he's got my stuff, thank you.
contract modifications coming.
We have 2 more contract modifications that will be coming the board's way probably as early as next week. One of them is to add about $375,000 from PGM revenue to the contract. As the board may recall,
Chairman Kane.
Chairman Kane, are you able to put the phone on mute, please?
I think the other different side here. Leave that open though, so that's the close back there.
Thank you.
yeah, Mod 4 would be primarily to add the $375,000 to the DCSU's contract. That's the PGM revenue received. And then Mod 5 would be monies from the Solar for All initiative that the agency would be working with the DCSU to implement. That is going to be a much larger amount. I think somewhere in the neighborhood of a $40 million range to have them assist with the implementation of the Solar for All program that you may recall that was passed by the council for us to do about 100,000 households by 2032. So those two, we will send the amendments over to the board for review as soon as we have them substantially drafted.
It's over several fiscal years. So 40 million this year.
Thank you. Great, we'll look forward to seeing you. Thank you. Lenny, I put your name on the next category, SEU Advisory Board expenditures, but what that was referencing was the proposal with regard to an expenditure out of the SEU Advisory Board's pot of money for the attendance at something I can't recall.
I will explain. Everyone received an email more than a month ago now from inviting people to indicate their interest in participating in a PGS energy training session. So far as I have been able to spend, only 3 people are interested. Like to participate, and so are in this meeting, and I can still hear Betty Ann's office voice. The purpose of this meeting is to get the board's permission to go ahead and spend money on tuition costs. It's $1,500 for Vicki, Kirsten, and myself. If someone else wants to.
And this is out of the, like, there's not
session scheduled for May 2nd down. Vicki, I can hear, I don't know what's going on.
Yes, we can all hear that.
We can hear you, but we can also hear the echo.
Better now?
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay, so that's I know, Lance, you were putting together some of the paperwork that would be needed to go ahead and ideally advance us the money.
Well, we have done our research here in terms of what would be needed to fill out. Lenora has those documents ready that she can email to the board if the decision is that you are moving forward with this travel. It's just some simple forms that you will fill out, and then we will work with our finance team to process a payment. As I mentioned to you, depending on the timing of when we actually get these documents versus the date of your travel, we may be able to get you an advance check, or it might have to be a reimbursement basis.
There's no travel. This is downtown tuition.
So it's downtown tuition. Again, according to Bob, we still have to do we still have to do no advance for the board members.
For travel?
Lenore discussed with you for the board members being able to attend a conference. It seems to me that we're paying tuition and per diem. We're providing, Lenny?
No. So the board has some $9,000
yes, you do
a
have.
year to spend that never seems to get spent.
Yes.
Any year. It just keeps rolling over and over and over. So an idea was that there's training in DC, so it would be walking or a metro to go to attend the training, and 3 of the board members expressed interest in it. So it's a training issue, not a travel issue. I don't know about reimbursement versus otherwise, but the issue is the board has historically, at least as far as I know, never spent out of the pot of money. Here was a request with regard to a particular expenditure, and would the board weigh in on whether or not it agrees that this is an appropriate expenditure for 3 advisory board members to ideally bring, benefit, but bring back their benefits of the training to all of the board and the SEU, et cetera. And people should say whether or not, number one, that's acceptable, because there may be other reasons or other expenditures that people have in mind that would make this not the wisest use. So,
and if I can just interrupt, the 9,800 is what it is for the activities of the SU board. That's what it says in the law.
Okay. Thank you.
So, let me reiterate the title of this training, called Today's U.S. Electric Power Industry, Renewable Energy, ISO Markets, and How Electric Power Transactions Are Done. Okay? How power is bought and sold. May 22nd and 23rd in D.C. And as I say, I did send around this notice, and Lenora also has a copy of this notice from TGS Energy Training. And it's a full list of what you learned today. I'm scrolling. See. It's downtown somewhere. And for the two-day seminar, because we waited so long, is 1,000. Washington. Okay, we get the two-day seminar is $1,895, 1,895, and if 3 of us attend and we let them know by the cutoff date, we get $100 off for each. I'd like to let them know like this week. And Lenora has all that information. Yeah.
So the request is that the board approves the expenditure on 3 board members' participation in the training out of the $9,800 that has never been spent.
Yeah, so that's,
So that's
something.
Yes.
Was it $1,875 per person?
$1,895. It's a two-day session, full 2 days.
57.
And then she said minus 300.
Minus, yeah.
5385. Wow, math is great.
That's a board decision that we'll leave up to you guys to determine.
Yeah.
And it's, May 22nd and 23rd. May 22nd and 23rd at the Melrose Hotel. I don't know where that is. It's someplace.
I think it's Boggy Bottom.
Is it?
I think so. Yeah. So, can we ask for people to say yay or nay on this? The motion for an expenditure out of the $9,800 pot of money.
Yes. Vicki, Vicki, this is John. I know I've been remarkably silent. Can I just have a quick question?
Yes.
Does the money in the budget, I don't object to the expenditure. I think it sounds good, but does it use or lose money? I mean, if we had money in there and
Yes.
then it just went away?
Correct. It does not roll over. We do not accumulate.
Yeah, you get a new
Okay.
9,800, but you don't get twice that if you don't spend it.
Right. Every year it goes away. Has anybody in the history of the SEU, has there ever been an expenditure out of it? And I know that.
Yeah.
Has there been?
Yeah,
We
for
did
retreat.
Yeah, just for retreat purposes, yeah, we didn't need the money.
And so if so the money would, if not used, would go away at the end of September?
Yes.
Or when?
Yes.
Okay. And there'll be some money left over if we do, we're able to do a retreat or whatever we get to call it, right?
Yes.
What did the retreat
But for
cost
clarification, how much funds are available and how much is the cost of what Lenny proposed expending a certain portion of the funds for?
So you have $9,800, and this it will cost $5,385. So you'll have about $4,400 left.
What did the retreat cost?
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm in favor. I'm personally in favor of spending it, for tuition for this.
And the cost remains the facilitator.
So I'll make a motion if we need to make a motion, or I'll second it if we need to do that. But if there's more discussion, I'm happy with that too.
Thank you. All right. Well then, why don't we take that as a motion from John? I do think it's important that there be amounts left for a retreat that we still keep trying to have. So it sounds like they would both be workable, at least in my estimation, and I've not heard of there being other candidates for the expenditures. But I know we talked about outreach, and we thought that was beyond what the board's budget would allow. Like, that's not a board expenditure, that's a SU expenditure, DOE expenditure. But the retreat has definitely been on the burner for a long time. So, okay, so John moved. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Why?
Thank you. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Done. Great.
Okay,
Thank
I'm
you.
going to, just for safety's sake, I'm going to email today's notification from the insurance company to Lenora and to you, Vicki. So we're all okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
It's noon and we are at our expiration point, but that would lead us to planning on the retreat with which to spend the remaining money is the next agenda item. So let's definitely carry that over until the next one. Old and new matters. One thing I would be pointing out would be vacancies. We have to figure out what to do about the 2 additional vacancies. Kirsten, you look like you're going to say something.
Oh, no.
Noel. And did anybody else have anything that we should at least identify to carry over?
Yeah, Vicki, can I just raise one point too? That this may sound completely random and out of the blue, but it's actually tied to something Lance just said about the DC goal of having 100,000 solar roofs by 2032. I just think so. I'm doing a lot of work on energy storage now, and you know that is a laudable figure. But if that figure is not tied to some master plan that, you know, to get working together with Pepco or whoever we would be working with, you know, to look at energy storage, I think we're at cross purposes because there are jurisdictions and places I'm working in where a lot of clean energy is produced and it's dumped because it can't be used. So, you know, it would be wonderful to have 100,000 rooms, but the worst of all possible worlds would be to have the, you know, the electricity generated and not be able to use it. So, my only comment is not to discuss it now. It's just to raise the issue for discussion at another time.
So I think I've
Well,
gotten
this
a
is
couple.
again, if I could weigh in, it is kind of timely in our modernizing the energy delivery infrastructure docket. We've got RFP out. We're going to be hiring a consultant and setting up work groups and energy storage. I'm sure we'll be one of those as part of that. The other is we're up to about 3,500 solar roofs right now. It's been increasing, but that's where we are. I thought that had been changed so that it was 100,000 low-income people who would benefit, but not necessarily solar roofs.
Yeah, so it's my understanding that it was changed as well because there was an emphasis and a focus initially on low-income residents, and that data was actually flawed. So I think it has converted to that.
Right.
So
there aren't 100,000 low-income roofs available.
Exactly.
If I'm understanding that and tracking all this correctly, it seems like the contract modification that Lance was just saying was coming our way with regard to the Solar for All program is something that people have an interest in figuring out if there's going to be some planning and coordination involved.
Yeah, and we're having we're having a stakeholder meeting on this in May, right?
A stakeholder meeting in concert. So, but what's the timing in terms of a contract modification?
Yeah, I want to raise the issue simply because it's nothing in 2018 that we need to worry about. But unless we align, you know, going full speed towards encouraging solar roofs with, you know, with storage and energy management, it's cross purposes. I don't want to. I just wanted to raise the issue. Perhaps we can put it on the agenda next time.
Well, it also does seem like we should make sure that the contract modification allows for development of a plan or coordination so that there's the kind of coherence that we've been talking about trying to achieve.
I do want to just 90 seconds to point out that the agency, broadly speaking, has a multifaceted approach to accomplishing this 100,000 households goal. As you guys may know, we issued about $13 million in grants last year to several grantees that are doing so as we speak. The DCSU is just going to be one aspect of that approach in terms of the funds we're adding to the contract with no guarantee that that money will be there until it comes in the RDF payments. But what we're trying to do is have the SCU be another tool in the box completing renewable energy projects in the district. So the plan that the SCU is going to come up with, it's really going to be something that we think that they should be able to achieve with the amount of dollars that we're adding to their contract. As far as larger coordination is concerned, a lot of that is being done right now, and when they do put together that program design, I'm hoping they speak to it. For example, the SREC leverage support program that we discussed with the board, that's part of one of the current grantees initiative that is doing solar, but the SCU is providing that SREC relief to help them expand the amount of households they're doing. So it's not a situation where the SCU is solely responsible for the Solar for All initiative. They're just doing one aspect of it.
Well, I mean, that's fine, Lance. Let me just give you the worst case scenario, because it's something that I've been working with for a couple of years. Germany and Denmark are the poster children of putting in lots of renewables, but not thinking through, storage. So Germany has installed so much solar and wind energy that on any given day, depending on what's being generated, they produce excess electricity, minute to minute or hour to hour. They produce excess of 20 to 30 gigawatts of electricity, which get dumped and crash the grid there. So they're working on it, but they're trying to fix it after the fact. I'm just saying it doesn't matter if it's SEU or anybody. The new thinking is you've got to marry up creating renewables, since they're intermittent, with other things, particularly storage, to make sure you don't just put stuff in and then waste the power. So anyway, again, I didn't mean to go over. I just think it's a really important point for everybody to keep their eye on the ball.
No. I appreciate you're raising it, and there's a couple of folks from the phone who are, emailing likewise, and so I think everybody will want to pay attention to the contract modification and appreciate you bringing it to our attention before it becomes a done deal.
Right.
So thank you.
Okay. Well, I just thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So I suggest adjourning. I know I gotta get someplace else in a minute. And we'll take up older matters or other business next time. Okay.
All right, thanks.
Adjourning. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I was really hoping that
I
know be here today about the carbon.
To the extent that, well, no, it's because they were saying they thought the 100,000 goal was changed from households to residents.
This is partly the reason. I want this board not to confuse this SEU initiative with your broader solar for all.
Yeah, but the one so-called goal is still households, not residents. The code that was updated, but they didn't change that. They didn't take that recommendation.
Otherwise,
okay.
They just put the baseline to be 2060.
Yeah, but nobody said residents.
That's what people just said, that the goal was changed.
They don't know what they're talking about.
No, the house goal was changed from. I don't know what, I don't remember what the original said, but they're saying you're not going to be able to find the 3,000 groups. It's not the house.
But
so
that's still what the code says.
No, it says resident. I mean, a household. Household doesn't have to be. Household can be an apartment.
Yeah. True. Yeah, but residents, there could be 5 residents in a household.
Yeah, but what they were thinking that you have to put solar on 100,000 roofs. That's not.
Oh no, because cracks and all of that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's what they were, and it was they're saying there was change so that you don't have to. You're not gonna. But Barry and Ken was saying you're gonna find
Definitely.
I'm gonna send you my audios.
Okay.
I call
My
every day.
recorder.
Matter of fact, we can call it right now.
I don't know where it is.
Can't get an answer on this one.
No, mine is tacked
Yeah,
somewhere
right.
in
She's
some
a new
box.
point person.
Oh, you have to sit for the move.
I don't apply to her. Because
Why are we
keep
meeting
in
tomorrow
mind,
at 9 o'clock?
if you push over
And it's not here.
just tell you stick to what's in the contract, which is
Yeah, is he gonna show up at 9
They don't have to give us decent
I don't think, I don't know if I'll show up at
I know, but Lance is making that call.
Okay.
Because God forbid something happens.
Okay, that's great.
Lance,
Like landscape protect
why
us.
are we meeting at 9 o'clock tomorrow?
Because that's when they want to have the kickoff meeting. At the SU too.
Yes, I know.
What did you do about it?
I won't be there. I have to be in New Orleans. How was your
That title means
No, I have to leave by 8.
to get there for that?
you keep saying
I'm
oh,
gonna
it's
take
5
Metro.
days.
Okay, that's straight there.
Really?
I mean, a mini
Wait,
one.
I see them black over again.
Severely limited on urban rush hour
You go
until
down.
9:30.
What?
Yeah, the main streets are gonna probably. Yeah, if you want. The other thing is traffic is gonna go horrible.
Darling, I used to live in New Orleans. And I go to New Orleans every year.
I go every year. I go every year.
You want to go to Paris and stuff? You need glasses for this.
No, and we don't, but no,
You go buy your glasses.
did we turn off
I don't think so.
like
How do you turn it off?
stages by the water?
Oh,
I think they have all the different bands and all of, you know, you just, it's like,
So how you get to take off in the middle of the week? I'm going to talk to Ted.
yeah.
I'm going to have to get Ted to talk to Scott.
Scott is here.
For years?
He's here today.
I know,
He's up here.
right?
I think
I know her.
Just going in and do some job.
That I have no conversation with all my I've been talking to. She has no understanding.
So,
So
okay.
I'm trying. I know it's too, I mean, that's outstanding on like you say.
So where did you go for the 5 days? But that value is going to change. You made them do both of those. I can just turn this off right now.
I
Just
do
exit out.
politics.
Well, I
They
know.
do politics.
It may not even have more. You may not even have. So, let me check. That might have it right there. Here's one might have it. Okay.
But I'm trying, okay?
No, we understand.
And I don't know what's going on with it.
Only because that's
So, I don't know, we
we appreciate your effort. We appreciate you. Turn it off.
Can you close that out, please? Just close the window. Yes.